The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to Navigating Disability. Today we're joined by Anja Christoffersen, award-winning disability advocate and social entrepreneur. Anja is the founder of several community-driven ventures, including the Women with Disabilities Entrepreneur Network, all inspired by her own lived experience of disability. She's also the author, international speaker and model, and an adjunct associate fellow at University of Queensland. Join us as we explore Anja's mission to create leadership and economic opportunities for people with disabilities and drive lasting, inclusive change. Welcome, Anja.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're very, very excited. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with disability?
So my journey with disability is quite an interesting one because my understanding, I think, has evolved a lot over time. But I was born with a really complex disability that not many people understood, and it was picked up at 28 weeks of my mother's pregnancy. And a lot of the features of it was that I was anatomically different. So I had to have a lot of reconstructive surgeries and spent basically the first 5 years of my life in hospital. But with, having reconstructive surgeries, I was under the illusion that I was fixed. And I think that the medical model of disability can teach us that quite a lot. So it was a little bit of a rude awakening when I was in my teens and I realized that my disability would have a lot of lifelong consequences, and I was going to have a very different journey and path to my peers that I'd grown up with. And it was then over time through that I understood chronic illness and disability more and understood that my experiences were actually part of that as well.
So how have you navigated that through your childhood and especially through the teenage years? Because as we all know, teenagers can be quite cruel as we're growing up. And so how did you face those challenges, if there were any?
I think as a child, I was really proud of my disability, even though I didn't see it as a disability. And growing up in hospital, everyone around you is also sick. And so you've got a peer group that actually is a peer group. So going into school, I had the expectation that everyone was like me. I had to do bowel washouts every single night just so my bowels worked. So I'd ask other people at school how their washouts were going. And everyone was so confused. I was only going home and asking my mum why everyone didn't seem to know what I was talking about, that then I realized I was a bit different. So during primary school, I was really still quite open. I used it as a point of, show and tell and explaining it to other people and showing them my scars. But as I went into high school, I realized that if you have a disability or a difference, you usually are treated differently.
Yes.
And I wanted to try and get my own way based on my own merits and didn't really quite understand that principle of equity, that sometimes I might need a little bit more support to have an equal opportunity. So I really hit it, didn't talk about it, and it was halfway through grade 11 that I got really, really sick, and that's when things changed for me. But in that time where I call like my well years, I still had to deal with a bowel that wasn't functioning. I didn't have the ability for any sexual function, and a lot of my peers were then starting to, lose their virginity. So that was quite isolating. Still having, challenges with swallowing and things like that. So I think I was very used to masking it all. But the challenges were definitely there throughout my teenage life.
Yeah.
How did you, because you said you just thought you were normal, and then when you came out of hospital, you thought you were fixed. And it's really funny because I had a knee reconstruction 30 years ago and I came out feeling exactly the same way and then realized all the rehab I had to do. And I'm like, oh, this is not normal. How did you, could people visibly see that you were different?
No, they couldn't. And I found it really interesting because I know we speak a lot about invisible disability, and it definitely has a place, but my disability isn't invisible to me. I think it's just invisible to others that don't know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
I've got scars from my surgery. I've got little bite marks on my teeth from having too many antibiotics while I was in development. I've got little, scars from all of the IVs. So to me, it's visible, but to other people, it wasn't. And I think that I use that to invalidate my experience a lot because I felt like I wasn't disabled enough to get support, or if I was, then I'd be taking support away from someone who might need it more.
It's definitely a hard position to be in because you do need the support, but you're denying yourself
Yeah.
from that because it's similar to someone that feels not worthy of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to think that you're disabled. You
Mm,
want to
yeah.
think that you need support because you get quite tough and go, no, I can do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
You realize now that how much it's extra it's actually taking you to get to the same level as people without disability.
Yeah.
How did you find, you mentioned your late teens where all your friends, were losing their virginity and going out socializing. How did you deal with that time?
The time that I was in high school, it would impact things in like sleepovers because I was supposed to be doing my bowel management flushes every night and I'd be basically completely incontinent for the next few hours after, even though I'm incontinent all the time anyway. So trying to manage those sorts of things, trying to manage having accidents in public, and I don't have the nerves or the sphincter or the control. So sometimes I'd have an accident and not even realize it. So I think there was a little bit of anxiety around that. Not that anyone ever called it anxiety, but also just always having that at the back of my head
Yeah.
and not necessarily being able to fully focus on the environment in front of me. And what I would do without realizing was I wouldn't eat that much because I thought if I didn't eat, then I wouldn't have an accident. So I noticed that a lot of people were picking up on that and thinking it was disordered eating when really it was just trying to protect myself with my disability. On the sexual function side of things, it was incredibly isolating because everyone was starting to understand and uncover their sexuality. And I had been exposed to more people than I think anyone who has had great sexual adventures has had, just because I was constantly being examined by doctors. The thought of being touched intimately was very hard to separate from being touched medically and that disassociation that you go through when that happens. So all of that was on top of not actually having a functional reproductive system. And so at 15, I started to go through the vaginal dilatation process and only really started at 16. And I was basically told 2 years before you want to lose your virginity, you have to do vaginal dilatation to get you there. And it just really took away, I think, that spontaneity that comes with
Mm.
adolescence and that risk taking, I guess, as well, because I just was not physically able.
And that's
So,
not a bad thing.
It
no,
was a great
yeah.
thing for my mum.
Yes.
Yeah.
She loved it.
And we're mums, so I'm like, yep, that's yeah. So going through all of the challenges that you have, that must have taken a mental like a mental load for you. How did you deal with that? Were you able to open up to family and friends about how you were feeling, and how did you cope with those feelings?
Reflecting on my adolescence, especially, I think that there were so many other stresses that were actually bigger than what my disability was. So whether it's, how do I make myself look good? Like something so shallow as that, because I went to an all-girls school and, it could be quite appearance focused at times, or how am I going to get the best grade on this assignment? So a lot of that, I think, while I was actually in high school, it came above my disability, and I didn't necessarily think about it every day. But it was more when I left school and I started to realize that some of the things I do, other people don't. And it's actually these, trauma reactions that I'm having or little things that I'm doing that I'm so unaware of. And I went to this conference.
Examples, Anya?
Yeah, so I think that I found it really, really difficult when I actually did want to start becoming sexually active because in the whole term of consent, when you're a young child in hospital, if you say no, it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And you get that absolutely drilled into you. Like, do you want this IV? No, I don't. And you can fight as much as you want. You'll just be tied down and it will happen anyway. So I found that a lot of those thoughts and feelings happened that I was trying to exert my boundaries in different situations. And they'd kind of sweep over them. And then I'd be like, okay, well, this is the way it is. It's either the easy way or the hard way. So a lot of those things that happened in my childhood were then starting to affect where I was. And it took me a little while to link them up. And once I linked them up, I also started talking to other people with my condition. And it turned out most of us had complex PTSD. And it was all related to that medical trauma.
Mm.
So actually understanding that and being able to do some of the work and know when I'm reacting to something in a really positive way because it's a trauma response and it's going to still keep me safe, or when I'm reacting to something that doesn't necessarily exist in the situation that's triggering it.
Yeah. And that was something that we were told, Kate. Remember, they said that the treatment is sometimes worse than the condition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're now trying to put healthcare access or childhood healthcare access as one of the adverse childhood experiences. So there is a lot
Wow.
more work that's happening in the space, but I hadn't heard treatments worse than the actual condition, but I actually believe it from my experience.
Yeah. And I guess
Someone,
if you don't suffer those hospital stays and things like that, you're so naive to it.
Yeah,
So it's good that you're able to talk about it because that, if there's only just one listener that can relate, then we've done some good. Because I don't think it's spoken enough about, and it
no.
is, it is PTSD, right? It's traumatic because as a children, we don't get it. We don't understand, and it's a fear.
and we don't get
Definitely.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as a child, I obviously spent a lot of time in hospital. Then childcares wouldn't accept me, so I'd go with my mum to work a lot, and she worked in the education sector. So there were a lot of people at universities wearing those big white coats, and the second I'd see one of them, I would just scream and scream and scream,
Oh,
and no one picked up. She's actually traumatized. They just thought it was a bit embarrassing or a bit funny that I had those sorts of reactions.
yeah.
But I think there's a lot that happens that goes into your subconscious that then you start to unlock in your 20s and 30s and 40s. And
Can
yeah,
I ask, Anya, how old are you?
I'm almost 27.
And the reason I ask that is because wow, you're deep and
Mm,
you must have done a lot of work to get to where you are now, even the ability to be able to talk about
mm.
these things so openly. How did you get to this point in your life?
I feel that it's because I had a lot of time alone to think. And I think when you're in hospital, you are spending a lot of that time alone. Even if people are right there physically by your side, the experience that you're going through and that feeling of being trapped in a body that doesn't work, for example, is a very isolating and a very individual feeling and experience. So I think thinking about what I was feeling, trying to work out why I was feeling that, trying to come to terms of what's happening. And I'm one of those people that likes to make meaning out of everything. So I think that did serve me really well, trying to find a positive meaning for the experiences that I had, and using that as a way to process. But yeah, I think it's just being in hospital, being forced to actually stop and think. And I don't know if either of you have spent much time in hospital where you're literally just staring at a blank wall for hours and there's no entertainment, there's nothing to do. Your phone might be dead or you might not have a phone. And all you can do really is think, or all I did was think.
Mm.
And that's really interesting. Just something that I'm thinking off the top of my head was you go to hospital for medical reasons to get fixed or looked after. But does anyone actually look after the mental side when you're in there? Is that something you've experienced?
Not for me personally. I do have a lot of friends in the US and they have a lot more child life therapists there. So you'll have someone, with you making sure that that psychosocial and the emotional side is being taken care of. But with me, it definitely wasn't. And I'm very grateful that I had all that time to think to try and sort some things out in my head. But I think it was also reinforced that when you go through hard things, if you don't show emotion and you're brave, then you'll have a better response from others. And so I think that the things that were offered that could have made the experience better for me. So, for example, if you're having a really long MRI when you're younger and you just need a bit of sedation or you need something to calm you down, I would always refuse all of that because I thought that it made me a better person if I was strong and I could do it without it. Whereas looking back, like that was a really silly decision.
Yeah.
But we do seem to, I think, reward bravery in young people, especially.
Yeah. Oh, and they're just babies, aren't they? Like
Yeah, yeah.
they're just babies and they don't fully understand. So, you would have had many, many moments of self-doubt. Did you have certain strategies or mindsets that you had to implement to get through those moments?
I think it's been easier to get through them the older that I have become because I've had more evidence that I've been able to get through really hard things that I never thought I'd be able to get through before, and it's actually worked.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's really that point of self-reflection and that meaning making that I was talking about earlier. So especially when I went into advocacy, that I could kind of think, okay, if I'm going into a healthcare setting and I'm having a really poor experience, this is the equivalent to my work experience or my professional development. And how can I actually use this to create a better path for others? And when I kind of made it a lot bigger than myself, I was able to get a lot more clarity and about the time away from, those more traumatic experiences or any experiences that happen in life. I was much able to see the bigger picture that didn't make sense at the time, but actually worked out for the better longer term.
So you are one of the, and I'm going to say this very loosely, one of the lucky ones. You've been through a lot, but in that instance, you've been able to put those mindsets in place to better understand any situation, really makes you a lot more resilient than I probably would think you give yourself credit for.
Thank you.
I'm actually quite mind blown
Mm.
at your maturity and your acceptance. You almost have two ways of going, the fork in the road. You can dwell on the illness and the disability and how shit your life is and how hard life is, or you can embrace it and you can work with your strengths.
Mm.
What does your disability look like today for you?
It's really multifaceted. So the disability is basically affecting most parts of my body. So at the moment, I have a lot of issues with swallowing, and that's been since birth. They did a surgery at 5 hours old to reconstruct my food pipe and my air pipe. And in that, they cut through my vagus nerve. So I don't have any contractions in my esophagus at all. So it's just gravity fed. And in that same surgery, they collapsed my food pipe, oh, sorry, they collapsed my air pipe because it has cartilage around it. And when you're going in to reconstruct, that's damaged. So a bit of issues with breathing and swallowing. In terms of my bowel, like I was saying, I had a full reconstruction. So I didn't have a sphincter, I didn't have muscles, I didn't have nerves. So I'm supposed to still do a daily colonic irrigation. But I think part of adulthood is being able to rebel and do what you want. So I don't do that every day, which isn't great, and deal with the consequences. But yeah, I'm completely incontinent, and it's definitely a challenge, and it's definitely something that's on my mind often. I also have challenges with urinary retention, so sometimes I'll need to self-cath. I have two uteruses that like to play up at times. So dealing with, chronic pain, the bowel, the swallowing, all of that, and then just generalized fatigue and low energy and low reserve. And it was only last week that I went to my cardiologist and we're talking about how to rebuild back some of my strength. And he was saying, Anja, you're not starting at level 0, you're starting at level like -10 and to try and work your way up. And yeah, I think that was actually quite validating because I feel tired so often.
I'm just in awe about how you are so resilient. Like it's just you've been dealt this, this card and you're using it to educate and to inspire people.
So
And not many people would, to be
Thank
honest.
you.
It's in
what
awe.
are you doing with your days, Anya? What are you working towards?
So I have multiple businesses because I have issues focusing on one thing, and I'm sure you can both relate when you see all these challenges and disability, you want to attack it at every angle. So that's really what I've done and how I've built my career. So I do a lot of disability advocacy or healthcare representative work. So I work with the health service where I receive care, and I actually sit on their executive board, which is really exciting to bring that patient perspective. I also do work in research and just really trying to focus on bringing that lived experience voice and putting it at the center. So I have a lot of meetings or things related to that during the week, but then also with the businesses. So our big focus at the moment is our company called Shit Happens.
I love
And
it.
thank you. It's a toilet paper company, but also we thought, disability and difference, people can be scared of it. How can we find that common ground for everyone to actually relate? Everyone uses toilet paper, shit happens to everyone. So it was the platform that we really wanted to focus on. And that was born out of my understanding that when you're doing disability advocacy, you're speaking to people who already care. So,
Mm.
how could we get into the homes or the workplaces of people who may not necessarily care at all and might just want really nice toilet paper? So, we thought that being able to do that and provide toilet paper into corporates and households, we can actually start to change that conversation around disability to something that's a lot more positive and showing, the wonderful things that we can do and the stories that are in our community as well.
Innovation 101, people. Brilliant.
Should have done it through COVID. That was my only
I know
issue.
you would have made a mint.
Yeah.
How are the corporates and the businesses receiving that message?
Actually, quite well. So I'm not going to pretend that I get answered to every inquiry or email that I send off. I send far too many. But we've had some really great corporates very interested in how they can support, starting to order our toilet paper, and starting to have those conversations internally as what we are really trying to work towards on a larger scale is promoting disability-owned businesses and creating an ecosystem for that. So if we look at the Indigenous business sector, that started maybe 2012 with the certification with Supply Nation. That's now in all of the procurement policies. So governments and corporates need to buy from those businesses. I want to create the same for disability because we've thrown so much money at disability employment. We have the highest rates of entrepreneurship, but we don't have the ability to actually get those big contracts and start to get that income in. So that's an ecosystem that I'm really passionate about building, which doesn't really exist so much yet.
Yeah. So, what would be your best advice for the community out there that feels stuck in their disability and feel like that they can't achieve their goals?
I really think it's give yourself much more credit. I think that we have this interesting debate in the disability community about whether or not you should be called an inspiration for doing very basic, simple things that everyone does. And a lot of people feel no. And I'm a bit on the fence with this because honestly, for me to be able to empty my bowels is a huge achievement in comparison to someone else being able to do it. Just those really basic things. Or some days it's really hard for me to shower. If I can shower that day, that's actually fantastic. So I think it's about acknowledging the things that you do and that you are able to do and the effort and energy that you put in, and then just trying to find where your joy sits. For me, that joy sat in being able to create a better world for others coming along that path. I didn't have to go out and find a passion in a completely different area. It was born out of my lived experience. So I'd encourage people to seek what makes them happy. And if they can't really find anything, think about the experiences that they've had and the difference that they can make through sharing them, or mobilizing them through advocacy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just well said.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the company you set up? And I've totally just lost it now. The Entrepreneurial Women for Disability, was that it? The
Yes.
Women with
Women,
Disabilities Entrepreneur Network. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
absolutely. So, long name. Everyone loves an acronym, so we just call it WDEN, usually just to skip all those long words. But that really was to try and support that disability-owned business ecosystem that we're trying to create and be able to do some of that advocacy on a more systems level to create those opportunities. We also want to build out a business directory. So we've got that happening in the background. So people can come and they can see, oh, wow, there's a cool candle business that we want to support, or we want an accountant, but let's get a disability owned accountancy to do this. We also have mentors that actually aren't really connected to disability at all, but have incredible business experience and a lot of expertise in their individual areas, whether that be supply chain or branding or legal. So being able to bring those minds together, so when someone already has a business, they can actually be directed to someone that has really good expertise and actually cares about disability genuinely, not because it's got anything to do with their job role. And on top of that, ultimately, what we're doing with Shit Happens is we're wanting to be able to reinvest money back into the network so we can fund businesses from scratch. Because I think another challenge we have is actually being able to access the money to do things and to start things, because life is very expensive.
Tell me about it. Absolutely. What hopes do you have for the future with for people with disability?
I have incredibly high hopes that we can actually build the solutions to our own challenges. I think we throw the word co-design around a lot in like NDIA world, and I don't think we're actually really doing that or have an understanding of what that looks like in a genuine way.
Quite
But I
clear that
think
they haven't done that over the last 2 years.
Mm-mm.
no, no. But I think actually understanding that people with disability have a lot of value, and that's something that takes time and it's cultural change, really. But looking at how we can get that value out in different ways. And one of my first businesses was around professionalizing lived experience. So people know that their lived experience can actually enact those changes. And what excites me is seeing all of these advocacy careers bloom. Whether it's advocacy in sexual consent or women in media or in disability, we're seeing people actually build their careers around making a social change. And I think the more leaders we see with that, the more spaces it makes for people with disability to be leaders in their area.
Absolutely. What does the future hold for Anja?
I hope a lot of really good things. I would love to see like really big business success. I think that would mean a lot to me and also be a good validation that what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to build is possible while you're doing that with a disability. I spent basically the entire month of April in hospital. And there were many times when I was in hospital where I thought I would never be leaving that hospital because things were looking terrible. It was the sickest I've been since I was a child. And I've come out of that with a much greater appreciation for life and actually being able to live life. I think that for the past few years at least, I've been so focused on this point in the future that might never happen, whether that be business success or getting married or having children. So right now, I think it's more for me just focusing on the little things each day that bring me joy, whether that's having a nice, like freshly squeezed juice or sitting in the sun or connecting with a friend and having a lovely call. I think for me, I will be a more grateful and more purposeful and more present person in the future, but I'm just really trying to work on that now.
So
And
you
just
said
appreciate the little things, hey? Just
Yeah.
you said that you spent April in hospital. Is that something that you need to be aware of forever? That, you may be in and out. It's not something, as I said, you're not going to get better.
Basically. And I am really annoyed that I wasn't fixed because that would have been lovely. I think that I've realized the older I get, the more challenging my life becomes. And it's almost like I'm in a gradual decline, but no one's able to say, this is the kind of endpoint that you're working towards, or this is why this is happening. But with a lot of medical event intervention comes a lot of challenges, as we kind of alluded to before. I have allergies to almost every antibiotic under the sun now. So it's really, really hard to treat simple infections. When I was reconstructed, I had all three openings reconstructed, but somehow over the years, my urethra grew to be within my vaginal opening. So I have constant UTIs and challenges there. But just the whole fatigue and energy side of things, I don't know if I can get out of bed the next day, but I also don't know when that acute illness is going to hit. And like I said, I was so severely unwell. I wouldn't have been able to tell you a week before that that was going to happen. And it just wiped out a month of my life. So I think being able to build a business and have a fulfilling life with those things and contending with all of that, I think that's what I'm really trying to learn and
Who
do.
supports you on in situations like that? You obviously have your medical team for your medical issues, but what about your friends, your family? Who is your rock?
I think my mum really, she has been there since the beginning and understands all of this. But as we both grow older, I'm finding that the medical trauma is impacting her a lot more. So when she's in hospital with me, she's usually quite upset. So I've learnt to try and mask how I'm feeling to support mum and support other people because for me to talk about really horrific things that happen to my body is very casual. But when other people are hearing it, it might not be that casual and it really seems to affect them. So I think that's made me more hesitant to lean on family and friends. And I've been lucky to build an incredible community of people with chronic illness and disability. But I think the challenge is often they look to me for that hope or for that inspiration or for, something that can pick them up when they're down. And I almost feel bad crushing that in ways. Like the times where I don't really see a light at the end of the tunnel, it makes me hesitant to say that to them because I don't want them to feel the same about their lives.
so you,
Dysfunctional, but
you're
yeah,
protecting others when you need protection too.
probably.
It's very selfless of you. And
Thank
that,
you.
yeah, it's
Who looks after Enya?
yeah.
Anya.
Yeah, I have to look after myself, I think.
But
And
don't discount mama
no,
because
no,
she's
of course, mum.
stronger than you think.
Yeah, and I do have beautiful family and friends that all do provide a lot of support. I think that I do just tend to isolate myself from that when I shouldn't. Something I
You're
need to
just
get better
trying
at.
you're just trying to protect them, right? But
Yeah,
they're there for you for everything. So
yeah,
yeah, don't yeah, look, I've gone into my mama bear mode because I'm a mum. Don't ever isolate yourself. Yeah, because
yeah.
it's not going to do anyone any favors.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot easier to give advice when you're thinking of giving advice to someone else, but I never take my own advice because I can see that it's a really dysfunctional habit that I have.
I think we could all attest to that.
Yeah.
I said the same thing yesterday to someone. God, I wish I could take my own advice. And yeah, thank you so much for talking to us today. What an extraordinary story, and your journey really is inspiring to a lot of people out there. So we hope that someone will get something from the way you've handled the last 26 years. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you. You take care.